on this episode of Edge of the Web.
Like, this is speculation on my part, but to me, it makes a lot of sense, like common sense, that it's really easy to create a website. It's really hard to create a web presence.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, alongside Tom Broadbeck, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
I'll say, well, welcome back to Edge. Unfortunately, Broadbeck is not with me today. He's illin at home, and we certainly want him to make a good recovery. He had a fever a little while ago, a couple days ago, but we certainly want him to get back in the studio soon. So, Tom, get better. Hey, we're broadcasting from Edge Media Studios, located in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. Every week we bring you latest trends in digital marketing, as well as marketing influencers from around the planet. Check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We're powered by the title sponsor, Site Strategics. I can't even say my own company name. Site Strategics, your digital marketing pioneer, specializing in the agile digital marketing strategy and execution. So if you're interested in what agile marketing is, it's really results-based marketing and adjusting it month over month to be able to focus on success. If you're interested in what that is and how we can possibly help you in your digital marketing campaigns, just give us a shout and jump in, give us a contact, or call us at 877-SEO for web or 877-736-4932. We give you an hour consultation free of charge to kind of give an idea of what we can see and possibly some action items for your digital success. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. I'm the CEO of Site Strategics. And every week we want to bring this show to you, our digital marketing audience, as well as company owners and CEOs and CMOs, to be able to understand and kind of unpack the entire digital marketing landscape. There's so many different tactics that are, honestly a bit mysterious, and there's so many different avenues to go down. We try to unpack and kind of demystify and also debunk some myths in digital marketing space. We also do that not only for you, but also for us. We got to keep our powder dry, and it's a constant education that we get from the show. So it's a twofer. Go think. All right, so I'd like to introduce to you our guest on the show. It's Ruth Burr Reedy. She's the Director of Strategy at UpBuild. Ruth, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome. You told me before show that it's a bit hot over in Oklahoma City today.
Yeah, it doesn't really start cooling down in Oklahoma until toward the end of September. So there's always this time of year where it's all back to school fashions and it's like sweaters and long pants. 95 degrees out.
So they're really dealing with some hypothermia in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, it's very cold inside with the AC and very hot outside with the.
Yeah, and that transition that you go through, right? I mean, you got blistering heat, and then you've got frigid cold. I mean, that's tough sometimes to really, but it's so well worth it. It's
all about the layers. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so I'm already all about layers. And moving here, I definitely found there's still a lot of room in my life for a cardigan.
I can commiserate. I mean, that's I feel the same way. Well, what we would like to do with you is every show we actually dive into the latest digital marketing news, and there's a lot of it this week. So, are you ready to kind of forge ahead there?
Super ready.
All right. So let's take you through the latest digital marketing news.
I was very excited to start my reportings.
This week's trending topics.
Alrighty, so first on the docket from Search Engine Journal. In fact, all these news articles are from Search Engine Journal. They've been knocking it out of the park here the last couple of weeks. From Roger Monti, SEO community. I wanted to leave with this because this was huge. Fun there. Get that? All right. The SEO community actually resists Trump's threat to regulate Google search. So here's the deal, is that when did he say this? This was this week. He actually tweeted threats to regulate Google search, claiming it is biased against him. His economic advisor revealed that the United States government was looking into regulating Google search. The search marketing community erupted in spontaneous opposition via social media. This is what Trump asserted. He said Google search results for Trump news show only viewing and reporting of fake news media, as he calls it. In other words, they have it rigged for me and others so that almost all stories and news is bad. Fake CNN is prominent, Republican conservatives, and fair media is shut down. Illegal. All right. That actually resulted in an explosion of responses in the community. Several of them are darn funny, especially I think from Scott Henderson touching base with Matt Cutts. He said, since you technically work for real Donald Trump, could you please explain this Google thing to him? So there was a lot of outcry regarding what the SEOs believe that Google is in its purity. So, Ruth, I'm going to tee it up for you and ask you, what do you think about the assertion that Google is leaning, and particularly left, and do you think that they are deliberately filtering content in that space?
I mean, the short answer is no. The long answer is it's complicated, right? So I do think that this is a good reminder that most people don't understand how Google works.
Yep.
My first reaction to this was that GIF. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. It's important to remember that how Google decides which things come up is very opaque to a lot of people, and I think that a lot of people suspect, especially if they've already got any kind of sort of like conspiracy theorist bent to their minds, that Google is sort of cherry picking and hand picking results. Having, worked alongside, I guess, Google for so many years, it seems to me that is the exact opposite of everything Google wants to do, because there's so much information on the web and they want to organize it. Anytime they're doing something manual, it's like a last resort because something's broken and they can't yet fix it algorithmically.
Right.
What Google wants to do ultimately is serve up information in an algorithmic way that makes sense so that they don't have to cherry pick results. So I think that the president's tweet in this case betrays a really common just lack of understanding of how Google works and what things rank. I think there's also, so Barry Schwartz had a really great post on this topic on Polemic Digital this week coming out of it, which I thought was a really detailed and nuanced sort of breakdown of what's going on. It's important to remember that what he's actually talking about here is not even Google as a whole. He's actually talking about Google News, which is a small subset of the overall world of Google.
Absolutely.
And, the way that things get into Google News is slightly different. And there are definitely publishers. I think Google News is interfacing really interestingly with the overall problem of media. One of the overall problems of media right now, which is that how media is going to make money going forward is still really up in the air.
Right.
And a lot of, traditional TV news, but especially newspapers, are really struggling to figure out, like, how are we going to make money in this new digital world? Some publishers are actually choosing to remove themselves from Google News so that people can't find them for free and they have to subscribe, and they're trying to build it up on a brand level. But the way that Google ranks things in top stories specifically is again, a very small subset of the overall algorithm. So that's important to remember. I think a lot of people in this roundup that Roger Monti did had a good point, which is that, if half the news about you out there is negative, you're probably going to see some negative stuff in the search results, especially, because people tend to talk more about what they don't like than what they do like. I mean, this is the classic Yelp problem, right?
Yeah. Where
you might have a restaurant that lots of people like just fine and a couple of people really hate, and you have terrible reviews, right? Because people who like you just fine don't feel the need to say anything about it.
Exactly. Yep.
So I do think like that is another problem. I think in general, the Trump administration has not been one of our more internet literate administrations. And you can see that in, as Ian Lurie calls out in this roundup, some of the changes that have happened to whitehouse.gov, There's been a lot of removal of content. The site as a whole is smaller. I think just from a pure SEO perspective that they're wasting a lot of link equity. But I don't work for them, so that's not my problem. So I do think that there's sort of a confluence of factors here. I don't know. How long do you want me to talk about?
It's okay. So I mean, this in its own right could actually be an entire show. Talking about the lack of understanding, and we face this with the Facebook debacle of the user content, the user data that was being sold, and that was the monetization of Facebook. There was such a removal of knowledge. It's not even removal. I mean, there was just the maturity of today's society. They don't understand what's inside that magic box. And I hate to be insulting, but I mean, this is from a digital marketing space. This is where we work, and it is regularly challenging to try to educate to the clients and be able to show, hey, this is how these different areas work, and on top of that, in unison. But there are you're absolutely right. There's been so much conspiracy because of the opaqueness that because of that, I mean, you can literally attribute anything. Any wistful thoughts of what's going on behind the magic green curtain, right? So because there is not that level of transparency, it does kind of necessitate these type of conspiratorial thoughts, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like whenever somebody brings up the idea of fairness vis-a-vis Google, I tend to kind of go, as I tend to remind especially my small business clients, like Google is not a public utility.
Exactly.
Google is under no obligation to rank your website for anything unless they think that your website should rank for it. Right. And Google's also not a media outlet. Google has no, journalistic obligation to present both sides of an issue fairly or equally. Like all of that is happening a lot more based on, Google's machine learning driven, but also human driven assessment of what people are searching for when they search for something. So of course it's not fair. Google is a private company. Google doesn't care about being fair. Google cares about making money.
But at the core of that is serving up the consumers what they want. So this entire concept of public regulation and Facebook being a utility and Google being a utility, boy, that is far-reaching, and that's certainly a detriment to free speech because, I mean, literally, you're right. Google is a private company, and they can do what they want. If you don't want to, go use Bing, right? But I mean, if you're going to play in the sandbox, you got to play by their rules. Yeah,
and I think that the suggestion that this might result in some kind of regulation for Google is really troubling.
Yeah.
For many reasons. I memean, the First Amendment implications, and Google's First Amendment rights have already been established in court.
Yep.
That's really upsetting. I think the internet I still think is a really important public resource, and the idea that it might be constrained by regulation, I find troubling. I think that there are reasons as a liberal to find it troubling. I think that there are reasons conservatives should find it troubling as well. Ryan Jones talks about I thought this government was not about regulation, and Google is one of our largest American businesses. Are we going to impose government regulations on them? I do think that what we're starting to see is an increasing awareness on Google's part of the problem of disinformation.
Right.
And, the ways in which things that are not true can come up. There was a huge problem a couple of years ago where a ton of anti-Semitic sites were ranking for a lot of Holocaust related terms because, again, the only people who were saying anything about it were people with something negative to say.
Right.
And Google has taken steps to amend that. And what you're seeing now in the most recent version of the Quality Rater guidelines is an increased focus on, is this true? Is this content intended to deceive about a factual matter? And I don't think personally that that's coming from a partisan place on Google's part. I think it's coming from a sincere understanding of the role that Google has played to date in a ton of bad information being out there on the internet. They started with your money or your life sites, holding those to a higher standard. And now news sites are actually considered a your money or your life site. So they're being held to that same informational standard, which I think is good and an example of Google being better stewards of information on the internet than they, I don't know if necessarily need to be. Like, I am cynical enough about Google to suspect that their users want this, and they've found that user trust that they're going to find facts that are true on Google will drive increased use of Google. But whether it's mercenary or charitable, like, I think the result of that is good.
I like that. That's got to be a soundbite right there. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the counter argument is, and we can finish up with this, is that, I mean, these purveyors of content and these purveyors of information took stabs at truthing out, vetting out sources, and there was a whole nother conversation about who's watching the Watchmen, so to speak. Who's vetting out those sources that are vetting out content. Man, there's slippery slopes all over the place. And what really gets down to is it's the public education, is that you cannot trust everything that's on the internet. And you have to be able to filter yourself.
I agree with that. And I think, too, it's important to remember that, like, as we move toward a more AI and machine learning driven Google and algorithm and just sort of world, that humans are all inherently biased. There is no adult person who is free of bias. And that means that adult humans are, in my opinion, incapable of creating an unbiased system. And we've seen that over and over. Every time anybody tries to train an AI, it turns out super racist because there's just a lot of racist information in the world.
Right.
What you see over and over with machine learning is that it reflects human bias. And I think Google is trying to be very thoughtful about how they are using machine learning and trying to combat bias whenever they can. But that requires a lot, to your point, that requires a lot of self-awareness. And being aware of what's true and what's false versus what you believe and what you don't believe. There's a lot.
And basically people are lazy, therefore we're going to run into this stuff. All right, enough on that. I appreciate the latitude on that. That article really, I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens in this space. Let's go.
That this week, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to talk about the president on this podcast.
Well, you did it deftly. So,
well, thank you.
No problem. So, an article from Matt Southern over in Search Engine Journal. Google says focus on search console data when disavowing links. And we love John Mueller. He's a fan of the show. Google's John Mueller has clarified that search engine algorithms do not look at, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong article. John Mueller actually said he recommends focusing on data in the Search Console link reports. If you haven't seen that, everybody, you got to check that out in the Search Console. Look at that when determining backlinks to disavow. The topic came up in a recent Google Webmaster Central hangout when a site owner asked if the data contained in the Search Console is enough to go on when purging bad links. And John actually responded, Google Search Console shows incoming links. It is enough to disavow the bad ones that are shown in there in order to be able to get rid of bad links. So in response, Mueller said that the links shown in there are the ones that are worth focusing on. So that's a great use of the tool, is to make, I mean, if Google's showing you these links and you know that these links, some of them are garbage, take it from Google and use that tool for that explicit degree, right?
Yeah. I think that Search Console is a great place to look for this because every link tool is going to weed out some garbage to some extent, because a lot of the internet is just like a terrible tumbleweed ghost town that, like, you don't actually need to care about. No one cares about it, but it still exists and it might link to you. The links that you see in Search Console, for a fact, Google is aware that site links to you. The piece of advice that John gave in this Webmaster Hangout that I think is most important is look for patterns. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I tell clients a lot. Like, if you have a whole bunch of links and one or two of them are bad, it's probably fine. Sure. Like, you could disavow them if you want, or you could spend that time doing something else, and it would probably be a better use of your time.
Right.
What you want to look for, and this is true not just for bad links, but really just in general, when you're looking at the inbound links to your site, is what are the patterns? What can I see? And especially if there's a pattern of bad links, where are these links coming from? How are they getting to me? Especially if you're not the one who built them, to go in and say, like, I didn't build these. This is not me.
Right.
That's really where I think the disavowal tool is useful and a good use of your time. So certainly, Search Console is a great place to start. What I would probably do is look in Search Console, see if I can perceive the beginning of sort of a pattern, and then use a tool like Ahrefs to sort of pull in a more complete look at the inbound links to your site, see if that pattern plays out on a larger scale, and then disavow all that.
Yeah. Especially in reference to patterns, one of the cool tools that we came across years ago was cognitive SEO, and they have this view from above of spirals going out from the main domain. And if you start seeing link farm links coming in, they're all kind of equidistant from the center, and you start seeing patterns like literally bands, rings of a tree. And as soon as you see that exact same equidistant type of patterning, you know something's being fabricated, and you could be a subject of bowling from another competitor or what have you. So.
And that's something you can also do if you have just the raw data, put it in a visualization tool like Tableau or Power BI, and you can get the same kind of thing.
Absolutely. Last article, and quickly, we want to jump into another Matt Southern article. Google says we do not rank websites based on author reputation. John Mueller is continually giving some great information. He actually has clarified that search engines do not look at author reputation when ranking sites. The question was asked in a recent Google Webmaster Central Hangout. Say that we have a site with multiple authors, and we find out one of the authors has a poor reputation or has developed a poor reputation. Is there a way to remove the author from the site but keep the content? And Mueller actually answered this question by explaining that removing an author would be treated like any other site change, but there's nothing special about making that particular change to a website. So, he went on to also address the concern. I wouldn't look at quality, rather guidelines as something. Quality rater guidelines is something that is like our algorithms are looking at explicitly and checking out the reputation of all authors and then using that to rank your website. So, this is the fact. They're not looking at the reputation of that author as a factor in any way, shape, or form, as we hear it from Google, of a ranking point. Thoughts?
So I spend a lot of time thinking about the quality rater guidelines. I know there are people who think that you shouldn't pay attention to them. There are people who think that you should. Mm-hmm. What I tend to think about when I'm looking at the Google quality rater guidelines is, okay, these are human readable quality signals that they're giving the quality raters to look at, because quality raters are human. And then I ask myself, okay, so we know in general, Google is saying, here is a way that you can determine a quality signal. What is the machine readable equivalent of that?
Right.
And what I suspect from that is that Google has determined that authors as entities, author entity indexing, is not an effective way to determine content quality. Mm-hmm. They've probably found or are in the process of looking for other algorithmic ways to determine whether or not the creators of content should or do have an impact on that content's resultant quality or reputation. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the whole idea of expertise, authority, and trust, right? If the content creator as a whole is not somebody who is expert, authoritative, or trustworthy, that I think should have an impact. And I think what John, and I'm not trying to put words in John's mouth, like it's not like I've talked to him about this. What I think that means is that John is saying that Google has decided that authors as entities is not the best way to do that. Mm-hmm. I would suspect that they are looking at other ways to find those same quality signals that maybe would be really difficult for a human to look at and parse. So this is like a shortcut for quality raters. Mm-hmm. I also, though, take exception to the question. Like, if you have a site with multiple authors on it and somebody who has a bad reputation has created some content for you, either you want to divest yourself of this person or you don't. But like, taking them off your site and keeping the content that they created for you.
Oh yeah.
I think that is kind of a jerk move and kind of wishy-washy. Like, either you're associated with this person and their content or you're not.
Yeah.
That's a moral thing, not an SEO thing.
No, you're absolutely right. And that it seemed a bit overreaching that with that question that they'd be doing more harm than good if they were actually purging that content out completely out of their site. So, yeah, I don't know who asked that question, but it certainly at least opened up another ranking factor discussion. And we do know that we certainly had a bobble a couple of years back with rel authors being a factor or non-factor, and yeah, you're certainly going to have quality decisions from Google as it applies to contribution and inbound relevancy, but I mean, when it gets down to it, are they really paying that much attention to that specific factor? Evidently not. All right.
And especially like, are they doing it to the extent that they are creating some sort of, internal index or database of every single person who they can recognize as an entity and the relative quality of their content that they create?
Right.
Probably not. But I imagine they are looking at other ways to figure out expertise, authoritativeness, and trust, and reputation signals around individual content pieces, and not just websites.
So basically, you just have to use Google Plus to post your article, and you're going to be getting that authority, right?
Oh, speaking of internet ghost town.
The only users now are the Google employees. All right. So
they say in my part of the world, bless your heart.
All right, so what we do want you to use, that's not a ghost town, is the Edge of the Web newsletter that we implore you to sign up. Every week we're sending out some great information about who we're actually interviewing, who we just interviewed, some great insights that came from the show, as well as some of these news articles that you're hearing. So all you got to do is text to the number 22828, the word Edge Talk, and you can start to sign up right there. Don't do it while you drive. You can also go over to edgeofthewebradio.com and sign up right there. It's free of charge. We won't use your email for anything else except sending over digital nuggets of gold. So be sure to sign up and give us some feedback on what we're sending. All right. Follow all the featured trending topics over at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now let's deep dive with this week's featured guest.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with Ruth Burr Reedy, Director of Strategy at UpBuild.
So the deep voice guy introduced you, Ruth. Hey, for our listeners and our audience, we certainly want to introduce Ruth. Ruth Burr Reedy has been working in SEO since 2006 and has spoken at conferences like SMX, PubCon, and MozCon. Congrats on all fronts. That's fantastic contribution. Ruth specializes in strong technical SEO as the foundation for a holistic inbound marketing strategy, and we're cheerleaders for that. That's at our heart over here at Site Strategics. It's technical SEO. Before her current role as Director of Strategy at UpBuild, she worked with Big Wing Interactive and was the head of SEO at Moz. Really?
Yeah.
Dang. All right, so there's the official professional bio. Ruth, give us your backstory in your words and how you got into digital marketing.
Oh, I love talking to people how they got into digital marketing because nobody's ever like, ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed of SEO. So I have a BA in theater, and about 6 months before graduation, I realized that I did not want the life that comes with theater, and like you have to want theater to make theater work.
Absolutely.
I was like, no, maybe I want like a regular schedule and like a 401k and health insurance and things like that. So I didn't really know what I was going to do after I graduated. I got a temp job for a business intelligence company, just doing data entry. And they were blown away by my data entry, which at the time I didn't get because I just showed up and did the job. But now that I have managed interns and temps, I realized how great that was. But they found out that I could write. So the person who was doing SEO for them, a woman named Susan Urban, who's still one of my all-time SEO mentors, she taught me basically SEO for blogs. So I started writing blog posts for them and doing some sort of SEO related tasks for her. She ended up wanting to move on. So she spent 3 weeks sort of sitting me down and teaching me as many things about SEO as she could.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the most intense 3 weeks periods of my entire life. I ended up being there for 4 years. And since then I've worked at a couple of different SEO agencies. I was living in Seattle at the time. I ended up coming on to Moz in, 2012, and worked at Moz for a couple of years as the head of SEO there. It was great. I loved it. My husband got a job at the University of Oklahoma, and we moved to Oklahoma, so had to part ways with Moz. And took a job at I had met David Christopher, who at the time was the sort of general manager of Big Wing Interactive. I had met him at MozCon, and we had become friends here in OKC. And he was like, "Oh, you should just come work for me." So I did. I worked there for a couple of years, and I have been at UpBuild for about 2.5 years now. UpBuild is run by Mike Arneson, who I know has been a guest on Edge of the Web as well.
Absolutely.
And he and I had been industry friends for a long time, and he tweeted out this director of strategy job. And, I'm a good friend. Like, if my friends are hiring at their companies, I share that out, and I hit tweet. And then I was like, I want that job.
Delete.
Undo. So yeah, I called Mike and was like, should we have a conversation? He was like, yeah. And that was 2.5 years ago. And it's been a dream.
Very cool. So UpBuild services clients all over the country. Any foreign clients outside of the country?
Not currently.
Cool. Well, that's a great
That's not true. We have one client in Canada.
Oh, well, it's not really considered out of the country, right? I mean, we're all friends here on this continent.
They have a .ca and a .com, so we are doing some international SEO for them. But
very good. Well, you're a long-termer in the SEO realm. You go back and you've seen so many different algorithm changes. And
one of my first tasks when I was first doing this was I would go into old blog posts and bold and unbold words so that I could republish them and they would be fresh. And that back in the day before anybody knew what they were doing.
Yep. Those were good times. Those were fun times. But with all these algorithm updates, fast forward and things are changing rapidly from Google, and they're not nearly announcing anything that they're doing, but they have announced just recently a core update, and that was the Google Medic update. So can you tell us what you think this update targeted?
So the Medic update appears to have mostly targeted your money or your life sites. Mm-hmm. And so what that is in the quality rater guidelines, Google talks about your money or your life sites, which are sites that offer any kind of health information, mm-hmm. or sites that have any kind of financial, whether that's financial information, mm-hmm. or if they're collecting financial information from users. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is if you have a shopping cart at all, if you're any kind of e-commerce functionality, you are your money or your life site. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we talked about earlier when we were talking about the news is that with the most recent quality rater guidelines, news sites have now started to be considered your money or your life sites as well. Which makes sense. People make decisions about their lives based on the news. So a lot of the sort of up and down that we've seen the sites really be affected are sites that, especially sites there's been what I've seen is more of an impact to sites that are health related. So diet sites and nutrition sites and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then also starting to see news sites be impacted as well. So I think a lot of what this is coming down to is expertise, authority, and trust, which are sort of the three main signals that quality raters are told to look at.
Right.
Looking at, is this content helpful? Is it useful? Is it real? Is it factual? And trying to build more of that kind of quality assessment into the algorithm.
They're also looking at the beneficial side of the content as opposed to the more transactional side. That money or your life concept is literally around the concept of these sites that are literally wanting to guide people to that transactional amount. But the beneficial content without those type of e-commerce transactions, they're okay, right?
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of the beneficial content, I think, is more if you are providing advice that sort of goes against an accepted consensus, and again, especially in the health world, mm-hmm. If you're, a lot of sort of alternative medicine sites, Sun, Impact, and not necessarily if you're saying something that a lot of other people don't say, but if you're saying something that's the opposite of what a lot of people say, that's when you're starting to see that impact. I do think straightforward e-com sites, we did see some impact. A lot of that, I suspect, has to do with your overall security around your shopping cart.
Okay.
One of the things that Google looks at in terms of beneficial or reputation in general with e-com sites is this a scam? So the human readable signals, many of which are also machine readable, that Google tells their quality raters to look at, are things like they have an About Us page. Is there a way to contact them? And not just is there a way to contact them, but like, is that contact us? Is that just an email? Is there a phone number? Can we tell whether or not this is a legitimate business? What's their return policy? What customer service information can we find? A lot of that, again, I'm phrasing it in human readable signals because that's the way that they talk about to the quality raters. But a lot of those, again, are pretty machine readable. So if you are an e-com site and you're worried about having gotten hit by this, that's one of the things that I would really look at is what are you doing to make your site say, hey, this is a legit business. Do you have an About Us page? Do you have a way for people to contact you? Do you have customer service information?
Right. No, very good. So let me ask you this, is that for companies that have been hit, that they may or may not consider themselves in that space, but they're still seeing a downturn in their traffic or more importantly, their organic traffic. What are some of the things that websites can do to recover from this?
Well, I think a lot of it, again, my assessment of this is that it is all pretty heavily quality and reputation based. So I would take a look. I mean, links are always going to be a part of the algorithm. We have yet to find a signal that replaces links in terms of sending the kind of signal that Google looks at, which is a shame because links are a really porous and gameable signal. But take a look at your inbound links. Are they from reputable sources? Are there places where you can promote it more? Are there brands that are reputable with which you can associate yourself? What information Google has said, okay, John Mueller just said, we don't rank websites based on authors. And I do not believe that John Mueller lies to us. I think that there are times when he doesn't tell us the whole story, but usually if the answer is that depends or it's complicated, he will say that depends or it's complicated. He said, no, I believe that.
Yep, I agree.
And I think that there are ways that are machine readable for you to make yourself look more like an expert. So one of the things that I talk to my clients, especially my clients who are small businesses, about is, do you have links from topically related websites? Do other sites that also talk about what you talk about think that you know what you're talking about?
Right.
That's, I think, an easy way to build expertise and reputation. And I think too, and again, like this is speculation on my part, but to me, it makes a lot of sense, like common sense, that it's really easy to create a website. It's really hard to create a web presence. So anybody can, I could slap up ilovecheapnewcarpet.com tomorrow and start stealing people's credit card numbers because they want cheap new carpet. That's easy for me to do. That would take me about a day. For me to establish a legitimate looking business online with active social media profiles and, a better business bureau listing and local citations and like all of the things that we tell small and local businesses to do to market themselves online, that takes enough time that it starts not being worth my time for how many credit card numbers I'm going to be able to steal.
Yep.
I don't actually steal credit card numbers. I made plenty of money doing
her link, I Love Cheap Carpet, will be in the show notes later on as we post the show.
So I think build your reputation, build your authoritativeness, look at how you can position yourself more as an expert.
I mean, it's the long-standing position of SEO. It takes time, and these signals, these long-standing signals that you invest in, are the direct antithesis to the get rich quick pursuits and the gamification, because it's not worth it to these black hat players, right?
Well, yeah.
No, that's the shortest answer I've ever had.
Like I tell people, I will tell you anything you want to know about what I do and how I do it, because a lot of what I do and how I do it is hard work and it takes a long time and a lot of it's very tedious. And a lot of people aren't going to do it, even if I tell you exactly how to do it. So I don't mind talking about it.
Preach it.
At every single, and this goes on to this day, it was more true, I think, pre-Penguin, but every single search marketing conference you go to, there's a talk on link building and somebody talks about, creating good content and planning it out and spending some time and figuring out a promotion plan and like the things that you do to get good links. And everybody's kind of like, oh man. It's kind of like eating your vegetables, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, what's your secret? I just, eat right and I exercise.
Ain't no secret there. There we are. So do you think we are ever going to be told by Google going forward what their algorithm updates target?
No. I mean, maybe to an extent, but not specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, there are two main reasons that Google pushes algorithm and updates. One is to combat spam, and the other is to deliver better results. So either they're finding that a specific subset of results are not delivering high enough quality to the users that are searching for those terms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you get stuff like Panda, where, there was time when like anything you searched, it was just eHow and about.com and it wasn't useful. They fixed that.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually figured out how to bake that more thoroughly into the algorithm. That's a quality update. And the other reason that they might update is that they found that a signal that they were previously relying on has become gameable or gamed to such an extent that that's affecting quality, and that's a spam update. And that second reason, I think, is the reason why Google will never be fully transparent about what they're doing and what they're targeting, because SEO is just going to wreck it.
Yeah.
Or just going to ruin everything.
Are we that bad? We're not that bad, are we?
No, not all of us. But, and this question we were talking about earlier, where the person's like, oh, if I remove an author
Right.
but keep the content, that I think is a level of signal chasing that's really tempting to do as an SEO, because what you want is like, I will do X, I will get Y, I will add I will add keywords to all of my title tags, and that will get me like X result, or I will make, these minute changes and everything will be fixed. And I think that granular of a signal, like, you're never going to find the one change that you make, unless it's something like, oh, your entire site is no indexed, and then I made it not no indexed anymore. Like, there's no one change that you're going to make.
Right.
It's even, if you see your rankings dropping off, the sad reality of that is it's probably not one thing
Right.
that you can change. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's like you have sort of a confluence of factors that have come together to decrease your quality signals that you need to fix and make better, and it's going to take months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or it might be that Google has decided that the kind of site that you are is no longer an appropriate result for that query. Maybe you're an individual business and they've decided that really what people want to see are aggregators for that. You search best blue widget and you have one blue widget, and what people want is like a roundup of the best blue widgets out there. You might never recover from that. You need to just cut your losses and target the next thing.
But even that, and I want to be respectful of time because we have a couple of different subjects to go over still. But even that, some of the strategy early on for sites was to be able to provide community-centric content or top 10 contents regarding a tangential element of relative connection. But at the same time, if those type of sites start getting marginalized, right, and that value that we thought was going to be good, engaging content, a couple degrees removed from the core business practice, right? Top moving tips absolutely is for a mover, but if that kind of content needs to be in an aggregated platform, that kind of goes against the signal that we've known before of good content, good utilitarian content for its own customers, right?
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of things like that where it's a tactic rather than a strategy,
Right.
and tactics stop working. And I think if you're going to survive in SEO, I think anybody can do SEO for 2 years. And then after that, either you are very excited that things that you used to do stopped working, or you find it very frustrating and you burn out and you go do something else.
The lifers have gone through the gauntlet many a time.
All of this has happened before, and all of it will happen again.
There's never anything new under the sun. All right. Speaking of things that are new, there's a lot of challenges that we're seeing with people deploying Tag Manager incorrectly. Briefly, can you give me some uses that you've been seeing with Tag Manager and possibly some issues that you've seen with Tag Manager?
So I love Google Tag Manager. I think Google Tag Manager is a big game changer, especially with the ways that it intersects with Google Analytics.
Mm-hmm.
The main one being that you used to have to hard code event tracking. And that meant getting developers involved, and it meant, deploying pages, and it might, take months for that change to go live. And now with Tag Manager, you can go in and do it yourself. There are a few things to remember with Google Tag Manager. One that I get in trouble with sometimes when I'm talking about it, because I like to geek out about it, is I will find things that you can do with Google Tag Manager. And I will say, oh, did you know that you can deploy CSS changes with Google Tag Manager and change the appearance of elements on the page? You can do that. You should not do that. That is not a good use of Google Tag Manager. That is not good CSS practices. That is, it's client side. It's going to look weird. Don't do it. But you could, which I think is interesting. Some of the problems with Google Tag Manager, the big one that I see is that people use Google Tag Manager to deploy Google Analytics tracking, which is fine, but they do that without removing hard-coded Google Analytics tracking from their site. And now they've got 2 instances of GA running. They're firing 2 page views for every page view. That can get really, really messy.
Especially on the bounce rate side. We've seen that regularly whenever there's dual tags. Your bounce rate is either goes to 0, which can't happen, or it just inflates things so much. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Didn't mean.
And people who are using GTM to deploy event tracking, well, sometimes they'll be firing sort of passive events on pages, some of which are useful. We fire an event for scroll depth tracking where if somebody scrolls to a specific point in the page, we'll fire an event. But if you're firing an event on page view, an event is a signal to GA that it's not a bounce. So your bounce rate is going to go way down. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And then they're like, oh, what's happening? That's what's happening. The other thing to remember is one of the things that I really like about Google Tag Manager is it's very easy to deploy tags. It's very easy to deploy third-party scripts, which is really all a tag is. So your conversion pixel tracking, your heat map tools, things like that. I love that because as marketers, getting that implemented can be a pain, and getting it taken back off the site can be a pain, which means that people just never take tracking scripts off the site.
Right.
I don't think I've ever, every in-house job I've had, I've come on and been like, what is this script that's taking 0.5 seconds per page to load? And they're like, oh, that's this tool that no one has used for 2 years.
I had the same conversation last week.
Every single page because no one took it off.
No.
Nice thing with GTM, it's easy to put on, it's easy to take off. And that can have a huge impact to your overall page load time. However, if you do enough stuff in GTM, it will still bog down your page load time because you're still sort of blowing out your document object model and things have to happen as the page is loading or while the page is loading. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't keep in mind is, again, if you're not using something, take it off.
It's not deployment. It's housekeeping and making sure that everything's inside one container as opposed to all these disparate spaces. And on top of it, but from human error, you can get things wrong if you're messing with too many things, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And, that's something like Google Tag Manager has the Workspaces option now, which I think is really great. One thing that we saw before they introduced this feature is that more than one person will be working in a container, and then somebody would publish the container with somebody else's half-finished tags in there.
Whoops.
And then they're like, what is this? So the Workspaces option, make heavy use of that. I would say if you're an agency, create your own workspace in your client's GTM account, just in case somebody else goes in and deploys it. They're not deploying your half-done container.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. So, a lot of it's just data governance, right? It's the same kind of stuff we look at with Google Analytics. Are your naming conventions for events consistent? Are we tracking the things that we need to be tracking? One thing that I think is very tempting because it's so much easier to track events with GTM. People are like, let's just fire an event on every possible user interaction on the site. And I'm really against collecting data for data's sake. I think if you don't know how you're going to use that data, you don't need to be collecting it. And, if you want to collect some data and then you look at it and you say that's not useful, stop collecting it. You can always fire it back up again later. But I think people are so no, I'll need all my data. What if I need it someday? And that, again, you're tracking too much stuff. It can, blow out your DOM. It also makes Google Tag Manager harder to use because you're like, where's the 3 things of the 95 things that I'm actually tracking that I actually need? So, those are sort of the big one to me, though, again, is if you're using GTM to deploy Google Analytics, make absolutely sure that you've taken off the hard coding.
Absolutely. And get it in the right place, please.
Well, and that's tough because Google has changed where that needs to be a couple of times.
Yep. No, absolutely right. Well, pardon me. I did want to swing back around to a last thought here regarding technical SEO. You mentioned in our pre-show notes that we're in the technical SEO renaissance. Lay it out for us.
Well, so I think we, for a while, had this, content is king era in SEO. It was all about creating good content. Just create good content. It was a lot about links. And people kind of had gotten to this point where they were saying, off-page signals are more important than on-page signals. We see, I think it was kind of a natural pendulum swing against sort of keyword stuffing, basically. People are like, you don't need a keyword stuff. It doesn't work anymore. Google is now a lot more sophisticated in terms of topic modeling, so you can use a lot more natural language. Title tags are of, debatable importance at this point. Maybe we just don't care about that stuff at all. And we'll just focus on building good content, creating topical authority, and gaining inbound links. I think all of those strategies are valuable. And your website is still important. And what we're seeing, and I think we first started seeing people talk about it a couple of years ago. I know Mike King gave a talk on the technical SEO renaissance at, I think it was at Search Fest, which is called Engage now, in, I want to say 2015. About the technical SEO renaissance. It basically took everybody to school being like, here are the technical things that are important about your website. And what we're starting to see now is that website performance optimization is becoming so important because the web is getting faster and faster, and optimizing your website for performance is more important. To me, one of the biggest signals that technical SEO is important is actually AMP.
Yep.
Google tried everything to get people to make their sites faster. They had mobile get-in, they had, all of these warnings about site speed. They built it into Search Console. And finally, they're like, okay, you guys are not making your site fast enough, quick enough. We need faster sites now, and you're not paying attention. So here, we'll just do it. Just put this, we'll just do it for you. You lose your privileges, basically. And that, to me, I think is a huge signal that Google really, really, really cares about page speed, because users really, really, really care about page speed. The thing that I like to remind people who have giant websites is that crawling your website costs Google money. It's like fractions of a cent often, but Google, it takes bandwidth to crawl your site. Like that information is coming from and going somewhere, and Google has to pay for that.
Yep.
So optimizing for crawl budget makes a lot of sense. Like, save Google some money. Like, if your site is inefficient to Google to crawl, there is going to be a cost benefit analysis for them about how frequently and how deeply they're going to crawl your site versus how useful they're deeming it to be. And that, I think, is something that we're starting to see people talk more about is your site crawlable? Is your site accessible? Is your site parsable? At the same time, we're seeing a lot of, the barrier to entry to create a site has gone way, 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 way down.
Yep.
And now we've got all of these sort of WYSIWYG site creators like Squarespace and like Wix, and GoDaddy has one now. And all of them say something about like how they're SEO friendly. And what they're talking about is title and description tags, basically. And what I think a lot of small business owners who are building sites with site creators don't necessarily understand is that there's a level of getting into the code that isn't always possible there. And you can actually set yourself up for failure rather than success. I mean, there are plenty of ways to properly SEO optimize a Squarespace site. There are also plenty of ways to set up a Squarespace site in such a way that it will be impossible to optimize and you have to start over. So at the same time that we're thinking more about web performance, I think other areas of the web, including to an extent web design, which has become very image focused, which can really bog down page load time, they aren't thinking about this at all. I think as SEOs, we need to be engaging more with the overall web community and talking about how to make sites that are beautiful and easy to build and easy to maintain, that also are highly crawlable and accessible and parsable by search engines. Absolutely.
And we're seeing that more and more, is that these sites are bloated, and it's like nobody even gave a thought to how heavy these images are. And these things, they're literally, because of the image saturation of these huge, above the fold, full-on image sites, they're releasing these sites with 300 DPI images. And it's just, at some point in time, somebody, the the pattern just shifted to just simple, easy to design sites, and the discipline of what we had learned for a decade and a half just stopped, right? So,
and it's being built by people who have not spent the last decade and a half learning about this.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Ruth, it's a pleasure talking to you because there's such deep channels of information that we could go down. And I'd certainly like to have another conversation about some of these more specifics, because I guarantee we could open up any one of these and spend an hour or three.
I talk about this all day.
It's a passion, and you gotta be passionate in SEO to really. I mean, from a digital marketing standpoint, an agency standpoint, you just can't housekeep on the periphery. You've got to deep dive into all your sites and make sure that you're taking care of these sites, because ultimately that's your responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I got one question for you. Well, two actually, to wrap up. Bugs you in your industry right now?
I would say a conversation that I have found irritating recently is about the idea of chasing the algorithm. There are people who say, paying attention to things like the Medic update at all is not important, and you should just be focusing on creating a high quality site. And, I understand what they're saying. And certainly, like we talked earlier about like looking for those like tiny manipulatable signals and expecting them to have a big result is not a good use of your time.
Right.
I do think that it is useful to pay attention to what Google is paying attention to, because the whole reason that Google makes changes is because they want people to keep using Google. So, and they have so much user data. They have a frightening amount of user data. So they know a lot about what users want. And I think looking at the changes that Google is making and what they're intended to accomplish will give you a good idea of the overall trends in user behavior that they're seeing. And that I think will help you do better marketing.
Oh, excellent. Oh, conversely, what excites you about your industry?
Everything. It's a really interesting time to be in SEO. I think, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of people don't know all of the information about them that is on the web and the ways that it's being collected and used. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see sort of on an international level, people start to become conscious of that. I'm really excited about the sort of future of the internet as being less devoted to URLs and to websites and more devoted to pieces of information, especially as we move to smaller screens and screenless devices.
Right.
This idea of like device agnostic content, building content that can be extracted and reproduced on a variety of devices, I think is super interesting and fun. And I'm really excited to figure out how we're going to track it.
What about the smart speakers?
What about the smart speaker?
When it gets down to SEO, I mean, there is a destination to get that first ranking of recommendation from these smart home devices.
So my stance on this is that this is not a device that people are using to replace their mobile and desktop computer. This is a device that people are using in conjunction with their mobile and desktop computer. So yes, and again, I think smart speakers and voice search and featured snippets are a great early way for you to tell whether or not you are building, again, information that can be extracted and reproduced on a variety of devices, which I think is super interesting. And nobody's saying, Alexa, please research all of the dishwashers in this general size and shape and compare them based on environmental impact, price, and availability in my area. Like, there are tasks that people need to complete online that are not appropriate to do via voice search. And
Ruth,
a lot of that sort of like...
You literally just triggered our Alexa in here, and it's now doing that exact research. Thanks.
I want to hear what it says.
No, you're absolutely right. It is in conjunction, and we as SEOs can't be scared about that space. And on top of that, it could very well get monetized out of realistic reach too, because if they start shoving ads in there, I mean, you're going to break consumers' faith anyway.
And I think in the end, it's called marketing. Like, you have a product and you promote it in the channels that it makes sense to promote it.
Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate all the time today. I'm sorry to have to wrap up the show, but I did want to let all of our users, our listeners, know that Ruth was on Wheel of Fortune in 2002. What was that like?
It was so fun. It was really, I tried out for college week and I didn't get on college week, but then they called me and said, do you want to be on NFL week? Do you like football? And I was like, I can like anything you like. So I got to meet Sean Alexander, who was the running back for the Seahawks at the time. And he was lovely. He's a lovely person.
Cool.
And I became like such a huge Vanna White fan. She's so classy and she comes and shakes everybody's hand and says, good luck.
Oh, wow.
Like lifelong Vanna White fan right here.
Sweet. All right. Well, is there anything that we can promote for you? I know you got a speaking gig coming up, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I will be keynoting Confluence, which is a digital marketing conference right here in Oklahoma City on September 20th. I believe tickets are still available. You should come. It's a really great little regional conference.
Mm-hmm.
I will also be speaking at State of Search in Dallas, which is in later this fall. I think it's in November. So you should come to that too.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate your continual contribution into the digital marketing space, as well as being a technical SEO evangelist. We need more of you out there, and we certainly champion what you're doing in the speaking circuit. Especially because, I mean, you're more than welcome. It's not it's enough to just do it and do it right. But if you're also teaching, just like Mike King, if you're going out there and setting the record straight and also re-educating, there's an entire crop of digital marketers, newbies to the game, that have never experienced what we've gone through over the years. And I mean, it is a renaissance because
there's so many people coming up in SEO right now. We're doing such cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, any final words for our audience of Edge of the Web today?
Don't hack it. Do it right.
Horcrux.
Horcrux.
Horcrux. I told you I'd find it. That's from Hogwarts, right?
Kind of.
Sorry, folks. We were talking before show, and I couldn't figure out what we were actually talking about. It just dawned on me. Okay, so I'm so sorry. Give us your final words of wisdom.
My final words of wisdom, I guess, would be this is hard. Take the time to do it right, and you'll be doing it better than most people.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. We certainly want to follow Ruth on social. So Ruth Burr is on Twitter as well as LinkedIn, Ruth Burr. And you're certainly giving back to the community on a regular basis. And we want our audience to certainly track Ruth down and find out what she's sharing, because it's the truth, folks. So thank you so much. We really appreciate the time today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
More than welcome. Thanks for listening to Edge of the Web and watching Edge of the Web Radio. Special thank you to our colleagues at Site Strategics, as well as especially our guest, Ruth Burr Reedy. Make sure you check out all the must-see videos and much more at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We'll talk to you next week. Do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. Get better, Tom. Bye-bye.